problem and the challenge we've got, and the government have known this, they know there is an issue here, but they're failing to give people the support to move to those greener vehicles to bring down the emissions. So therefore, if people can't make that transition because they can't afford it, then that becomes a charge as opposed to dealing with the problem of public health and the emissions.
You mentioned the problem of unclean air in cities. I'm sure you've expected this question. Is ULEZ a sensible green policy to tackle that problem, or is it a harmful tax on the poorest?
Well, the challenge with things like ULEZ, and we've got it in Greater Manchester as well, so I'm quite on top of some of the challenges that we face on this, is that you can't have a whack-a-mole, because some areas, we've got really significantly high emissions, and it is dangerous for public health. So we have to do something about it. But if you're just going to say to people, you've got to have a certain vehicle, but then you don't give them the means to be able to switch that vehicle, then in effect all you going to do is charge them, and you're not going to actually bring the emissions down. So that's why you've got to have a decent scrappage scheme, which this government have completely failed to support, whether that's our mayor in Greater Manchester, Andy Burnham, that has been pushing for this, or whether that's Sadiq in London, who has been pushing for support, financial support, to enable people to make that transition.
But Sadiq has made ULEZ a centrepiece of his policy. Have you spoken to him? Have you said to him, hang on a second, there are some times where ULEZ is not right, it's not going to work, it's not going to achieve what you want it to achieve, and it's going to harm poor people?
Well, no, Sadiq has been very clear on making sure that, he's revised the scrappage scheme as much as he can as the mayor of London. But the government, and this, I spoke about this because this is not just a London problem. We have high levels of emissions, and it's not about the green agenda. This is a public health issue. We have high levels of emissions in some of our cities across the UK that are causing harm to our children and causing harm to public health. So we have to do something about it. The problem and the challenge we've got, and the government have known this, they know there is an issue here, but they're failing to give people the support to move to those greener vehicles to bring down the emissions. So therefore, if people can't make that transition because they can't afford it, then that becomes a charge as opposed to dealing with the problem of public health and the emissions. Sadiq Khan's very aware of this and has been doing everything he possibly can, including having a generous scrappage scheme to help people. This government is failing to do that, and we have the same problem in Greater Manchester. Our mayor has been very clear to the government, help us. We want to bring down emissions where they're dangerous in parts of our city, and we want to help people to comply with that. And I think the public want to do that as well. I think the public want to help, but they're saying, look, if you're not going to, give me any support to transition to a new vehicle, I can't afford it. Yeah. So you're just going to, in effect, give me a charge, and that's not going to help the situation. That's why the public, get angry about it, and yeah. I completely understand that.
Just finally, Angela Rayner, your own personal future, if Labour government gets elected, are you going to be the John Prescott to Keir Starmer's Tony Blair?
Keir's no Tony Blair and I'm no John Prescott. This is, we're in a different era, and me and Keir are very clear on we've got to deliver change for people. People need to have hope into the future now.
And do you know what your job will be?
Well, my job will be supporting that process as a deputy prime minister, and there's lots of skills that I have that I can deploy in terms of supporting the team, because it is a team that will be, fortunate enough if we win the general election that will go in there, and we'll be a team united in making sure that we make that change for people, because people need that hope and people need that change so that they can really see that there is a long-term plan to keep Britain at the top in the global race and to give people and our children the future that they deserve.